Hezbollah has broken the de facto American siege on Lebanon. Okay, so the first shipment of Iranian oil has arrived. You know, because of sanctions, they couldn't send it directly. So what they did is they sent 4 Iranian ships to Banyas, to the port in Syria. And then from Syria with trucks, they've driven them down to Lebanon. And the first shipment has arrived. Okay, so as you can see, I'm just going to show you this on the screen. Hezbollah brings Iran fuel to Lebanon despite U.S. sanctions. And I really love this title, despite U.S. sanctions, as if, you know, like everyone has to adhere to U.S. sanctions, right? It's the it's universal law. How dare they defy the sanctions? So this is important, of course, that you know, the sanctions play a huge role in this. But you should pay attention to the language. Now, with Sayyid Nasrallah, what he said earlier on Monday, he gave a speech, okay, and I just want to play this very briefly for you.
نحن اعتمدنا التقسيم التالي. القسم الأول اللي هو بالحقيقة قسم نحن نرغب أنه ما يحتاجه لمدة شهر. يعني عم نحكي هلا عمليا إذا فاتوا الصهاريج بلشت المازوت يفوت على البلد. فعم نحكي من 16 17 أيلول.
Right, so just to translate for you, he's saying when it's going to come, and it's going to be over a month. So to get all this fuel in, it's going to take over a month. And if you look here at this article from Al Jazeera, right, what did they say down here? They say that Oil Export Monitor Tanker Tracker says the 4-tanker shipment contains a total of 33,000 metric tons of gas oil and would need 792 trucks to deliver the entire shipment to Lebanon, which is in desperate need of fuel. Okay, and these trucks have been coming in carrying each 50,000 liters of diesel. So the thing is that Iran is in, you know, it has a huge, Lebanon, excuse me, has been bringing this stuff in from Iran because it has a huge shortage, okay? So Sayyid Nasrallah, in his speech, he goes on to explain that shipment number 1, 2, and 4 are going to be mazot, which is diesel, and number 3 will be benzene. So benzene will be for cars, but what is the diesel for? Well, lots of things. You need, you know, diesel generators to power up shops, hospitals, you name it, right? Everything, ovens for bakeries. So many things are running on diesel, right? And the other thing, of course, is that who is going to receive this, right? So Lebanon is in a huge crisis. So who is going to benefit from this? Well, everyone, especially orphanages. So he lists them off. Nasrallah, he goes through the list of who will receive this for free, right? So public hospitals, orphanages, nursing homes, or you know, residentials, and the fire department, the Red Cross, you know, so this is going to all the essential services for free. And civilians, the rest of the people who want to buy this stuff, there's no profit there's no markup in the price. Okay, so they're going to get it cheaper than they would anywhere else. Okay, Hezbollah is not trying to make any profit from the diesel. They're selling it cheaper than anyone because there's no markup, there's no profit. They're just trying to help the situation. So to break this down even more, I'm going to bring in Hadi Nasrallah. Okay, so he's a good friend of the show. He's a brilliant political analyst and commentator from Lebanon, and he joins me now. Just let me bring him in over here. Wonderful. There we go. Hi, Hadi. Kifak, how are you doing?
Hi, how are you, Richard?
I'm great. I'm great. It's great to see you, Habibi. So, you know, I was just trying to explain that who is going to benefit from these shipments of diesel and benzene. So, do we know anything about the prices yet? Because, you know, Sayyid Nasrallah, he said there's no kind of markup, there's no profit in, for example, civilians trying to buy it. Do we know what the price is yet? Have they begun selling it already? Because today is the first day that this has come in, right?
So far, we do not know the exact prices they're going to be sold in because we still didn't get the actual gas for the cars and for domestic use, basically. What we got right now is the fuel used for hospitals and generators and other facilities. And Hezbollah announced that for the first month, it's going to be for free for all the basically institutions that are most in need. For example, the Lebanese Red Cross, the orphanage buildings, the generators, hospitals, public hospitals, of course, and basically special needs institutions. So those places are going to take for the first month for free. And now the second Iranian tanker on its way to Lebanon, it's going to have the actual gas for people to use, and it's going to be basically deployed in Al Amana stations, which is a Hezbollah gas station. And then we're going to find out about the prices. But so far, what we know is it's going to be much cheaper than what we used to buy from all the people who monopolized our gas for decades, basically, in the country.
So could you maybe break down for people how bad the situation is? I mean, I've tried to do this as detailed as I can, but, you know, please just tell people how bad it is. Like, this is not just something about, oh, there's not enough fuel in the country. It's much more than that, the economic situation.
So basically, since 2019, before that, we've been struggling a bit with the economy, but it wasn't that serious until 2019 after the white protests happened in the country, and then the Beirut explosion, and then the pandemic. You have the pandemic before that. It was pretty intense. I mean, the serious part is it's not that what is happening, it's how fast it happened. Suddenly, out of nowhere, our currency just dropped. No more dollar in the country because we're dependent on US dollar in Lebanon. And suddenly it's out of market. It's all in the black market, people exchanging, taking it outside the country, smuggling it somewhere else. And then now we have the crisis of the gas and fuel, which is not only a crisis for cars and people to use to go around, it's also a crisis for our institutions. We were almost out of bread in some areas because the factories can't work anymore. We're almost out of bottled water because the factories also can't produce them anymore. There's no more fuel. And we used to have, I think, around 7 hours a day government electricity, but the other hours we have generators for that. Now, both generators and the government electricity, we can get, if we're lucky, 3 hours a day in a lot of areas, which is very serious. And we're still struggling until today, which is why this Hezbollah move is seen as, some people are regarding it, they're saving the country because we cannot handle this anymore. And the US is not doing anything about it. Their allies are not doing anything about it. Only Iran offered, and they've been offering for years now. And we've been refusing because we want to abide by US sanctions against Iran. But now we said, okay, we've had enough. You're not helping. So we have to ask help from someone else.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like, why is this such a victory for the resistance? When people say that this is breaking the American siege or blockade, what do they mean exactly? How, you know, what is the mechanism here that's creating this economic crisis?
Yeah, and there's a lot of people actually who do not know how serious this is, especially to a country like Lebanon. Since our establishment as a country decades ago, never did we get anything against any US wishes from any countries that's sanctioned by the US. We always abide by US sanctions. This is the first time in history that Lebanon actually got something from Iran and throughout Syria. So you have Iran heavily sanctioned. Syria is under brutal sanctions with the Caesar sanctions, and Lebanon is under de facto siege because of the resistance, and we're basically annoying the US with some military stuff going on around the country. So Hezbollah before used to embarrass the US military-wise when they, for example, kicked the Israelis out in 2000, when they kicked ISIS and al-Nusra out in 2017. But this is a major economic victory. That's the first time that ever happened in Lebanon. Usually we have military victories, but this is economic and history in the making. So that's why it's very serious.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's been no response so far from the Americans and, you know, people who are against Hezbollah, against the resistance. What's the reaction been like, you know, on the street from the people? Because I saw, for example, someone fired an RPG in celebration, which is, you know, it's so Lebanese. I love it. But, you know, how are people generally receiving this news and, you know, the shipment of oil?
I mean, it's Lebanon, so of course the people are divided when it comes to any situation. So for something as serious as that, of course, we're divided. I can assure you that the majority of people actually are okay with this Hezbollah move, because the other side that's trying to attack Hezbollah and claiming that Hezbollah is now a state within a state and they're trying to undermine the government role, this is actually very false, because before that, Hezbollah didn't just suddenly announce that they're bringing oil from Iran. They did warn the government that if they fail to give out the needs of the people, they're gonna actually go on with this move, and they warned them on multiple occasions in Nasrallah speeches. So he didn't just suddenly announce it. When he actually wanted both his allies and his opponents, so the entire government. And then when the government failed to actually help the people that are suffering, there have been a few months, especially after the Beirut port explosion, then Hezbollah had no choice but to bring the fuel from Iran. And now when they arrived, And thanks to Syria, of course, Syria actually made us borrow all these tankers that are being used now to get the oil. And the ship actually sailed to Syria, not Lebanon. And that was under Hezbollah demand because they didn't want to embarrass the government in front of the Americans. So there was, although Hezbollah asked the people not to celebrate and not to shoot guns and stuff, but the people, they were too excited and they were too happy that they couldn't stop themselves.
Yeah, I just want to show some images over here. For example, I've seen people all over Twitter posting, pictures of people saying, so here's Shukran Iran, Shukran Syria, thank you Iran, thank you Syria. And so, I mean, over here, people have flags out as well. I mean, when we listen to the U.S. ambassador who is talking about the situation, they scrambled to go and get fuel from Egypt, right? Or rather gas converted. It's so complicated, right? So they want to bring gas from Egypt to Jordan, convert it to energy, and then send it through Syria to Lebanon. And Syria, however, agreed to this, right? And I wanted to ask you something because these two events coincided with what happened in Dar'a. In Dar'a, in south of Syria, there was a very volatile situation, and then suddenly there's a truce. There's a Russian brokered ceasefire between the militants and the Syrian government. And this just so happens to be where, the pipeline passes, right? So it goes from it goes from Egypt to Jordan, right? And it passes down here through Dar'a and then goes to Lebanon. Do you think that this coincided? Do you think that this ceasefire coincided with the fact that, Syria agreed to, not just Syria, but even Jordan, Egypt, and, of course, with Israel's consent, agreed to bring, energy to Lebanon? Because they really didn't want to help at all for the last couple of years, right, as you said?
I mean, it's quite possible because if you watch the U.S., how they reacted literally a day after Nasrallah announced that he's bringing oil from Iran, then suddenly they came out with this plan that they have been preparing for years, and we had no idea. We had nothing to do with it. They never even asked the government. They were just talking to their allies about it, and they kept it in their pockets until Nasrallah announced that. So I would presume that, maybe the U.S. had a role in calming the situation in Dar'a because they will actually prefer to lose Dar'a but not Lebanon because it's basically very intense for them. What's happening right now in Lebanon is very intense. The U.S. is losing grounds in Lebanon politically and diplomatically and even economically, and that's their fault. They pushed Lebanon to go to the axis of Iran and Syria. Even their allies are disappointed from them. If you see the comments of Lebanese people who are in the anti-Syrian, anti-Iran camp, they're always like under the comments under the U.S. officials. They're like, "This is your fault. We trusted you. We wanted you to act, but you didn't. You pushed Lebanon towards the other axis." So
but
backfired.
Right, but I mean, isn't it a bit silly to kind of hyper-politicize this? Because the people are starving. People, they're shab amiyani, they're really not doing well. So I mean, they are people refusing to get heating oil and fuel just because it came from Hezbollah? I mean, you'd be surprised. Some people actually would rather die out of cold but not take anything from Hezbollah in Lebanon, unfortunately, which is something sad. And even though Hezbollah, I want to tell a story right now that some people are saying that Hezbollah is bringing this fuel and oil only to their supporters and only to their community, which is actually false. They're bringing it to all the Lebanese people. And the biggest proof is a few months ago, we had a horrific explosion in Akkar, North Lebanon, when an oil tanker exploded and dozens of people were killed and a lot of people were injured and some are still suffering from severe burns. The government, our media only spoke about it one day and then everyone forgot about it. The government didn't react. And this area is actually very, very anti-Hezbollah. They're not aligned with Hezbollah in any way. Even though last week Hezbollah announced that they're actually sending financial aid to all the families of the victims and the people injured. They're the only party in Lebanon, the only group that actually helped those people. And those people are against Hezbollah, so people should now think about their country first and keep their politics aside. We need this. We need to work with Iran. We need to work with Syria. Even the US is working with Syria right now for the sake of Lebanon. I don't know why we're stopping that. This is incredible, right? So they have Syria under sanctions, and Lebanon under de facto siege, and so just to prevent Hezbollah and Iran from gaining any ground politically or with the people, they are working with Syria. It's astonishing to me, really.
Yeah. And the US just broke its most sacred sanction on Syria, that they're trying to isolate Syria from its region. Now they're making Syria work with Lebanon, Egypt, and Jordan.
Yeah, it's really incredible. And I wanted to ask you, when Nasrallah gave the speech, he said this is going to take a while, right? So this, just so people understand, this is only the first shipment, right? There's more to come. There are 4 shipments.
There's basically, right now, there are 4 shipments announced. So there are going to be more where they're going to announce in the future. So the first shipments are going to be basically fuel, like I said, for the institutions, for the hospitals, etc., etc. And then the second shipment is going to be for the gas, which is going to be basically put in like Amana stations, which is a Hezbollah gas stations company, which is under sanctions as well by the US. So they're going to deploy it there. And there's something even more interesting than Nasrallah. I think 2 speeches ago, he said that if the government also fails to find companies to extract our oil and gas from the disputed areas in the sea between us and the Israeli occupation, they're going to bring companies from Iran and from China and our basically countries are allied with the resistance to come and basically extract this oil and gas. So I believe that if the government fails, they're going to do it. They're going to go ahead and we're going to bring companies. This is going to be, I mean, dangerous a bit, but still, we trust in the resistance.
Yeah, but I mean, it's incredible because if you look at the videos, you look at the pictures, the trucks are driving. I think, first of all, they were protected by the Syrian army up until the border with Lebanon. And then when they're in Lebanon, they're driving unimpeded through the streets. No one is daring to stop them, right? Not even the Lebanese government.
No, they can't. I mean, Nasrallah warned them. He said before he even announced the oil, he said, if you fail to fulfill the demands of the civilians, of the Lebanese civilians, we're going to bring oil from Iran. And I dare anyone, he said that, I dare anyone to try. So
sorry about that. I was trying to play video. Here's sorry, just continue. I just wanted to play this video of the trucks going in.
Oh yeah, that was interesting how people just gathered and celebrate. I mean, the fact that people are celebrating oil coming into the country can show you how severe the situation is.
Yeah, absolutely. And what do you think this means for the resistance going forward? I know that Iran is also under sanctions, of course, but you know, Iran is sending fuel to Venezuela. They're sending fuel to Syria. They're sending now to Lebanon. I think it's interesting, though, that Israel didn't dare do anything to this tanker. You know, they're always blowing up Iranian tankers. You know, when Nasrallah said this is Lebanese soil, the moment it leaves, the ship is Lebanese soil. I really think, I mean, I was like, would they dare? Would they actually dare do it? Apparently not.
Yeah, I mean, they can't. I mean, Hezbollah is always serious about their threats and their warnings especially when it comes to Israel. I mean, even if they have to wait 5 years, they're going to retaliate eventually. And Israel is not ready for any retaliation or escalations on its border, especially after what happened in Gaza a few months ago. I don't think they're ready for any escalations with Hezbollah on their northern borders. So like, okay, let's just let the oil come and we're going to do something about it, but in another way. So of course there's a plot right now. They're planning something against Lebanon. And hopefully the resistance will be prepared.
And so you mentioned that they might start, extracting the oil or the gas, rather, excuse me, that is on the seaboard. What else do you think might happen if, you know, the government, the politicians, the elites don't clean up their act?
So basically right now, after like more than a year, I think, we have a government now. So hopefully this government's going to do some action. I mean, they're not going to fix anything. We all know that. But at least they're going to do some action which going to lead Hezbollah to settle down with their decisions and everything they're making. We don't want them to stop. I mean, we're good with what's happening. But I think they're going to reach some sort of meditation between all sides, between the Lebanese government and Hezbollah and their allies and their opponents, to actually, okay, let the government now take over. But Hezbollah is going to keep watching, of course, and they're going to see if they're actually going to be able to do that or not. If they're not going to be able to extract our gas, Hezbollah will do it. I mean, I trust they're going to do it after what they did now with the Iranian oil.
Yeah, it's quite a remarkable feat. So where can people find you on social media? Where can they follow your work and what you're doing?
So basically, I'm an activist and researcher. They can find me on Twitter, Hadi Nasrallah. And basically the other social media is just personal. I don't post politics that much.
Okay, I'm just gonna put your Twitter up on the screen briefly so people can see it and go follow you there. And really, I mean, great stuff and great talking with you. And thanks so much for your time. I know it's late, but this is really such an important story. I know they're barely covering it, so I really wanted to go through it with you. Shukran, habibi. Allah ya'tikum al-afiyah. Thanks so much.
Yalla, bye.
Yalla, bye-bye. Take care. Okay. That was wonderful. That was great having Hadi with us. And, you know, this is